Hello, welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Alyssa and today I just want to talk about some ways to help keep you from buying new makeup. So if you need some help with that, then please keep watching. On my channel, I try to do lots of videos like this where I'm talking you out of makeup or just using makeup I have with different project pans. So maybe you'll subscribe if you haven't. But for today, let's just focus on, like I said, avoiding new makeup. So there's all the different ways that I hear from other people. In fact, DW on Deb's Beauty Diary just did a collab video recently with another panner. That's the actual YouTube name. I'm trying to think what her name is. I hadn't watched her before, so okay, I will link to both of them. And they were also talking about, things to do for a no buy or low buy situation. So, there's stuff like unsubscribing from emails from the different companies, not following Instagram accounts for the ones that share all the new makeup. Sometimes it might just be unfollowing other people or muting them a bit or things like that. If they're the type that are always sharing sales, usually that kind of stuff is more in stories. So you could always mute the story, but then still be following them for their posts. Just things like that. But I was going to do some things that were not social media computer related that you can just do offline. So the first one that's the biggest one for me, I think, is just playing with your makeup, swatching it, making different combinations. So I do all sorts of different shorts and stuff where I will, because this is just what I was doing. I just then choose to sometimes film it just to show other people. But, taking a duochrome, multi-chrome, sparkly shade, topper type thing, something that, because if you just have a basic shimmer, sometimes I'll do it with a basic shimmer as well, but just taking an eyeshadow that's a little bit more special and then layering it over different colored mattes. I remember, I don't know, it was a while ago now, but seeing people, swatch the same eyeshadow over different bases and how, for example, I always thought black would be the perfect, base for a lot of the different shifty shades, but apparently a dark brown or medium brown can work even better. But then depending on the colors, you might want to do, other bases, which I just think is really neat that you can, take one eyeshadow and use it in a whole bunch of different ways, get different looks. So, you're not going to know how things look, like all the possibilities you have, unless you play around with them like that. So let's say someone is selling a new eyeshadow. If you were to layer things up, maybe you could get that same effect by using what you already have. Now, I understand sometimes it's like, well, I just want one eyeshadow to throw it on. Fair enough. But also, you might even have that one eyeshadow. It might do exactly what their eyeshadow is doing, but you didn't realize because you're not playing with your makeup enough. So a perfect example of knowing your collection is I had a look the other day and I wanted to add just a bit more pink to it. I already had pink, but I just wanted like a hot pink. And I had some new makeup to me, new as in I'd had for a few months. So I'm like, I think there's a certain shade in there that will give me that look. And sure enough, it did. So, I have found that when I bring in new makeup, the best thing for me is to use all those eyeshadows 5 times each, because I feel like just using it only a few times, you don't get to know it as well. But something about when I get past that 5 uses, that I've used it in enough different ways that I know, a little bit better how the shifts work. And I might still not know it over everything, which is why I still have my playtimes where, especially the night before, I might take different eyeshadows and kind of swatch them next to each other, layer them, just kind of see, could I make a look from these? because even if shades are in a palette together, it doesn't mean they all necessarily work together. But also I like to pair things from different palettes or different singles. And, it's something about seeing it on my arm. And even if I don't end up making a look exactly, with those eyeshadow colors, I do remember then, how some of those looked and felt for when I am going to make other looks or when I'm seeing new makeup out there, that it's like, oh, I have something similar, I don't need that. Or maybe it's even, I have something similar and I don't like it that much, or I don't use it a lot. So even if it's a slightly different version, especially like greens and blues, they're not my favorite colors to wear. And so I feel like I have enough of those that when I see something out there and people get really excited about it, but then I'm like, well, maybe though for me, it's kind of like this color and I know I don't wear it nearly enough to warrant getting another one. So that's why, swatching the makeup, playing with it, doesn't have to be on your face, because that can be annoying having to, wash your face and clean it off and do all that. Like, I understand that. Some people it's fine, but, usually it's like I wash my face, I put on skincare. I don't want to have to then waste the skincare by doing more of it, and I guess I wouldn't have to put, I don't know. It's, for me, just putting it on my arm or hand is kind of enough to get a feel for it. Okay, another idea, which is along the same lines, is pairing up your makeup in different ways. So, let's say you have your palettes and all of that, and you've gotten to know them well and you know your shades, but maybe you're kind of getting stuck in those specific color stories. It can be really fun to, take a palette and pair it with another palette just for kicks. There is a channel on here, Nikki, and she does Mishmash Mondays, where she'll take two palettes, and I believe she, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe she actually tries to take two palettes that you wouldn't think would go together, and then she does a palette bingo with them. So it's like, let's go ahead and take two wildly different stories and then randomize the colors that can get picked. And she still ends up coming up with these really great looks, which I think is so fun. So I'm not saying you have to do all that, because she is very talented with color, knows, how to get everything in a good spot. But you could take two palettes that you think might go together, that it's like, oh, well, this one has, a lot of darker shades, and this one has some good blending out shades for those. Or maybe you like the idea of like a blue color story mixed with a pink color story and see what could happen, and so by combining your palettes, you end up, creating more color stories. But you could also take a palette and mix it with some singles. You could take your singles and kind of, work them all around. You could do palette bingo, you could kind of play around like that too. You could randomize things, but you can also do this with your face products. Maybe you can combine some blushes. So, if you were to combine something that was like warmer with something cooler, what kind of shade do you get? Just mixing around. I do it with lip products all the time. Instead of buying new different colors, I try to just mix different ones on my lips and see what happens. And, lip color, it's really easy, I feel like, to, if I mess up, like take it off and just put on something else, or it just wears off. And so if it wasn't the prettiest color, or the best mixing of things, it's not a big deal. Another idea that you can use to help with not buying new makeup is to go on Instagram or Pinterest or wherever you like to get, makeup inspiration. And, a lot of times it's people using whatever new palette or things like that to make a look. But instead of that, instead of getting caught up with what they're using, you could just, find the ones that you think are pretty that you would, like to have on your face. Maybe they're not pretty, you just want to have it on your face. And, kind of go through your collection. If they're using a dark purple, do you have a dark purple, that you could use? And even if you're having to use, let's say, 5 different eyeshadow palettes to make that look, maybe you're having to mix some blushes, mix some lip products, things like that. but you're still coming up with that, final kind of look, then you could decide, I guess, was this really annoying? Is this a look that you would want to make again, on repeat? Or was it just that you needed that little itch scratch, to like get that look and then you move on? Because I know I often there's a lot of looks that are similar for me sometimes with, doing like a pink shimmer and then, certain crease colors. And maybe I'm using different purples and different blues and different pinks, each time, but I end up with a similar look. That's different. Let's say I had seen a look like that on someone and then I managed to kind of make the look, but, then I want to keep making it. Okay, maybe then it would be worthwhile to, buy what you need for that. Like if there's a certain palette or some singles or something, and maybe that is, you have like your go-to look. But chances are, if it's some just random Pinterest, Instagram kind of look, it's not something you necessarily would remake over and over. So use what you have, copy it, be inspired by it, and then you can just move on. And you didn't have to bring in something that now it's like, oh, well, I could always make that one look again, but I already made it and I'm not really interested in making it again. So the second to last thing I want to share for an idea is kind of pretend shopping. Or it kind of is real shopping, but you're not actually buying. So let me explain. What I like to do all the time when I'm really interested in something, like maybe there's a certain lip color, certain palette, certain singles, things like that, just all of a sudden I'm like, maybe I hear a brand is having a sale, okay? I might go in and, now I used to just save everything to carts, but I've learned that a lot of times the carts get cleared out over time. So if it's something like a big store, like an Ulta or something like that, where, you can kind of save your cart or you can have favorites and things like that, then I might, do something like that where they're just kind of, they are saved. Otherwise, what I do is, I go in, I do my little shopping thing of like, let's say I'm looking at eyeshadow singles and I'm looking at all the different options and I'm kind of picking through, and I'm not even necessarily culling it down to like a reasonable size shopping cart. I'm just sort of, maybe picking 10 shades, 5 shades, whatever it is. But even if it's only like 1 or 2 shades, maybe I have like these favorites where I was like, ooh, like, if I was to purchase, I'd probably do like, these shades, or maybe, then I send it to myself, maybe an email, a message, something. I usually include like the brand name, and of course I'm going to be listing out the names of whatever it is, but that way later I could do a search of, Terra Moons, Cleona or something, and, pull up that list. So if there is in the future a sale or another kind of sale, something like that, then I could go back to my list and look, or maybe they're releasing new shades and I can, look and see. And then by that point, maybe I have bought other shades that are similar, a different brand or something, and it's, oh yeah, no, I don't really need that anymore. Or, oh, you know what? This type of color I realized I don't wear a lot. It's not worth it, and I might take off some, maybe I add some on, and then I still might not buy at that point. That might just be still like, kind of playing with the cart. And it's like this whole pretend shopping. It's like I'm doing all that work, all that effort of narrowing things down and looking at the colors, looking up people swatching it and people using them in looks and talking about it, all that stuff. And, I get all of that, fun, energy rush of, picking things out, and then I just leave it. And, it'll just be there. It's not going to expire or something on me. It's there. And so, like I said, if there is a point where I'm, ready to buy something, maybe I'm making up a wish list for, someone like wants to get me something for my birthday. And then, I might be like, oh, you could, pick from this list here of stuff. Or maybe, hey, if you want to get me a gift card, and if I get the gift card, then I could always go through and it's like, okay, well, they gave me a $30 gift card. what could I get for $30? Or if there's a sale, maybe I would, let myself go a little bit over that or something. And, I kind of play around with it like that. So that to me is the best, because it's not, I can feel impulsive. I can like see something and go and like, go down that rabbit hole of finding this shades and all that I'm excited about. But I'm not going to actually buy it at that point. I'm going to wait and think about it, at least a day or two if I'm, really in the impulsive type of spirit. But usually it ends up being like weeks or months. And it helps kind of slow down the buying, so that, because I don't know, for me, sometimes it's like, oh, but if I don't save it to a cart or go, check out that product right now, then I'm going to forget about it. But that's just the impulsive side speaking. If I then go to it later, then I'm, having different thoughts, and I can be more like, well, but do I really want that? And I've kind of trained myself, I think at this point, to want that type of buying where it's sat around for a while and that I still want it, then I feel more justified in getting it. And you have to decide for yourself how long is a while to be waiting to buy something. But like I said, for me, it's usually weeks or months later, maybe years, because like Cleona, I'd wanted for years and I didn't get any until 2024. I have no plans to get any more at this point, just because it is expensive with the shipping and stuff like that. The only reason I got any last year was because, well, I had a gift card, but the only reason I even asked for the gift card was because I saw shipping had come down in price from what it was. Because when I had first looked, I want to say shipping was around $20, and this time it was maybe $10, which to me, divided up over the 4 or 5 shades that I got, it's like, okay, like $2 per, like I was willing to pay $2 extra per shade, so it wasn't a big deal. Okay, the final method for not doing, all the makeup spending is to play with your makeup. I know I already said it, but I think it's really important, and that's why I am putting it again here at the end. Please go and play with what you have, okay? You spent the money, or someone spent the money, you had that time of picking things out. You should play with it. You should enjoy it. You get to know your collection. You're going to, realize even more how long it takes to use up different things. So you're going to be less likely to want to go and buy it. Just like I said, if you check out DW and, other different project planners and people trying to help you with these low buys and no buys, it's because, we've done this panning. We kind of know like, hey, a blush isn't something that just gets used up like that. Unless you're using it every day, maybe a year, but probably not. Okay. And, that's fine if you have come to accept you're not going to finish everything in your collection before it might need to be thrown out. That's fine. But you still want to be able to get, a decent number of uses on it. You want to feel like you know it. It shouldn't be like you're just bringing stuff in and you don't really know where things are and they're getting lost and you're not even, remembering all this stuff. Like you should have sort of like this makeup memory of what you have. And you have a lot of other things going on in your life, so you don't want all of your memories being makeup memories. Just a small bit of your brain dedicated to that and, knowing about what you have. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching. Until my next video, I hope you'll be doing well, and I will see you then. Bye.